exercise yet, this is your chance para makakita mo sa kanang makakita mo sa unsaon na to fix ni nga part. So wong man nga map, Vanessa ba diba? Sakto? Kaning bali nga sa ni area, sakto to?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. So sa kaning particular data, supposedly mong good, equal ang sizes sa grid. Pero it seems nga ang kaning area sa Balingasag dili siya masulod in just one grid. So manotice ninyo na siya pakapin sa lower left kaning part diri sa naman part. Part ni siya sa ni Binitinan River. So di mo gud siya makat diri, so mo nang gi-extend sa mapper towards sa western nga section. So ang fix ani gyud kay mas ideal kung imo ning gilay sutol sa Photoshop kay para nga makat din siyang dire. Kay kung imo lang ning i-crop, sige na to crop ha. Pag ako ning i-crop, hiwi daan ang mapa pagka-scan. So makita ninyo pagputol, so naagi white portion nang maakip sa atong crop. So kung naay makabuhat og Photoshop nga ilay sutol para ma-remove niya dito, so mas maayo. Pero kung mo stay lang pod mo paint lang gamit or kaning basic cropping sa Microsoft, okay ra gyapon, pero matingala mo nga matambunan ang inyong mapa sa ilalom. So maapil man yung puti nga part. So kung naay makabuhat, maliso tol mas maayo. Naman siguro kabulo mag-Photoshop diri. So I guess mabuhatan ninyo na siya pamaagi. Now as to the question nga, asa ang iyahang kanang coordinate ana, ang ato manggong mapa nga gibasihan kay uniform na ang size sa grid. So ang kaning value diri sa taas kaning 12445 same na siya sa value diri sa ubos, which naara siya diri 12445. Na gamay nga crosshair diri half dani siya sa crosshair. Ang ihang y ana ang walay value. So, kung wala ganit nakasulat dire sa kaning corner, kuhaon nimo sa pika side. So, ang imong input ana is 8 degrees 40 minutes. Kaya pareha raman na sila og y. Ang extra man ang nag-difference. So, dire, ang corner, 125. Pero sa pikas, 124.45. But ang iyang y ana, pareha sa katong y na to dire sa pikas, which is 8 degrees 40. Nakuha na siya, Vanessa? All the rest?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
So, pwede po ninyo i-explore ang mapa. Makita man sa modera o mga crosshair, pareani karon. Kaning 50, na magyapon ni siya crosshair sa tungao. So, kung dili mong ganahan sa corner, pwede po ang sulod. Ang kuan lang, puti lang, pangitawon yun yung mga crosshair. Na ang mapa ra ba kay daan, so di kay nato mabantayan. Parehan ni crosshair dire. Basig maalanin yung treasure map ni kay X marks the spot. Pero dili na siya. Sa mapa ang pasabot ana kay crosshair. Kaya diya nag-converge ang grid sa X and Y. Okay? So, na-answer na tong question. Ang uban na abay pangutana about it.
Sir?
Yes?
Ano, wala na lang gi-appeal ang katong dagat, sir?
Wala gi-appeal ang dagat sa asa.
Sa katong white, bitaw, katong gi-crop, bitaw nga part?
Kani? Kani wala gi-appeal ang dagat?
Oh, yes, sir.
Ang agency manggod nga nagmapa, ang bias niya kay land lang ang iyang imapa. So kung mangita mo sa kadtong portion ani nga naang dagat, moadto mo sa Coast Guard kay sila pud ang nabuhat ana nga mapa.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Napayuban pangutana? Sige, so I guess wala. So mag-proceed lang ta sa atong discussion this afternoon. So basically kani nga exercise, daily exercise, kani nga lesson. Ay, by the way, makita ba akong screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Makita, sir. Makita, sir.
Yes, sir.
Gita, sir.
Well, nagkakaputol ko ba? Shit lang ha. Ako sang i-close ako. Ako sang i-close akong uban tabs kasi load siya may. Okay, wala na ko ilain lalagan. Okay. And then let's start the actual recording. Sige. So before I start the lecture, I'd like to invite everyone to visit our eLearn page for a reference of the materials for this session. So wala ko ihatag na new exercise for now. It's because the existing exercise is quite long. So you have to do that for 2 sessions. So what I'll add lang is a short lecture about stories of where. So in your eLearn page, you will already see the contents of item 6, or rather component 6, which is the stories of where. So if you try to open that, there are already links of the sample exercises. Okay, and this is not really an instruction, but some tips on how to build a good story map. But as to the exercise on how to build the story map, we will do that next week's session. Okay? So ako lang karon is just the introduction of how to present your data using story maps and what are the benefits of storytelling using maps, using story maps also. So before I do that, I'd like to give you some review on online mapping, especially on the parts of the S3's method of web-based geo-information system. So online mapping has been very beneficial for most businesses and entities. Google has been profiting from online maps since they introduced it in the early 90s. So this is just a list of big companies whose revenues are in dollars, and they have really benefited from Google Maps. Primarily, the use of Google Map is for health mapping. So this has been used in several occasions, not just with COVID-19, but also with other health services. So they've been benefiting a lot. So sa Philippines, we've had some projects related to mapping, but wala pa gid na nakasulod sa kanang high-ticket companies that benefited from online maps, especially Google Maps. So far sa Philippines, ang dakong income kung nagagamit ani would be Foodpanda, Facebook, of course, the local branch in Facebook here, the main company, which is Google, and even Grab Philippines. So benefit na sila from it. In terms of share of the type of mapping source, Google Map dominates the market. It's at 89.25%. So you will see most of the products from your cell phone, whether it's an Apple or it's a smartphone. Daghan kaayo siya uses because they were able to compress the size as small for a smartphone. So mapping using Google Maps has been possible. And we're introducing this concept na daghan na pwede mabuhat ang Google Maps. Even ang small companies, they can start with a very small capital, but they can expand their business if they have some web mapping applications. So to name a few, Tesla, Samsung, Foodpanda, Grab, even UPS, Google, and ArcGIS have benefited from Google Maps. So in terms of usage, mas dahoin ang healthcare, labi na karon tungod sa COVID-19. Restaurants for food delivery, automotive. So in the Philippines, medyo backward pa man kay tao technology sa automotive system, but wala pa po naka-idea dire mag produce of kanang automated cars. But in China, in Europe, and in the United States, Tesla has already been running their automated cars. And one way to make it more accurate is that the Tesla data should be layered in a map, or else your vehicle will encounter some accidents. So Tesla has been doing that. Foodpanda, we know of, it can use your private information, okay, kung saan mo food preference, and also the location of where your food wants to be delivered, okay? And in other instances, this has also been used in retail and real estates. Like for, if you're looking at a real estate property, whether it's land or if it's a condo unit, the pricing really matters. So the location in itself is very beneficial. So daghan na kay gagamit og web-based data for businesses and for other applications. So muna nga, I encourage everyone to learn the basics of online mapping. Kay if you're interested, if you want to go to the US and you want to work as a civil engineer, trust me, you won't be able to work as a structural engineer there. Taas kasi silang standard. So it might be needed nga you need a PhD degree before you can work as a structural engineer in the US. Unless, of course, you climb up the ladder, which will take time. But if you have GIS knowledge, even the basic ones, and you work in any company, whether in the government in the United States, mas dali makasulod. Okay, GIS nila is what's fueling their economy. So sa ilaha tanan, from Tesla to Amazon, even Amazon, yung delivery system relies on maps. So kung si Google gid i-disallow niya ang kanang Google Maps niya for one day, daghan kay magproblema. Okay, automation has been reliant with maps. And even the delivery of goods has been reliant on maps nowadays. Napabatatanan?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir.
Sige. Mangungusta ko from time to time kay kaya na ako masaligan akong internet. Kasi maputol na pod ko para sa akong mga meeting kaya di. So, moving on. We learned this method, which I usually use for my mapping projects, no? From the very beginning, I said that the data flow that we will work on needs to come from different sources. So the data, whether it's offline or online, comes from different sources. So the previous exercise actually, on trying to georeference a map from NumRIA, is one example of turning data into GIS. So sa adto nga case, we actually took data from national agencies. So the NumRIA map, even though it's old at 1950s, still gives us some wisdom. It gives us an idea kung asa ang rivers, asa ang settlements, where are our mountains and hills, and many landforms. So it's still beneficial nga maski karaan na ang mapa, we still use it for our mapping. So the beauty here is because data comes from different forms, you have different options. As long as the data can be loaded in GIS. And take note that any data that you load in GIS can be called as a shape file. And further, you can divide it into two. You can have a vector file or a raster file. So we'll work more on this data next week. Okay, buhat matag spatial database. from different sources. So if the data is too big, we call it big data. Okay, of course, by the virtue of the word big. But big in terms of data doesn't mean it's a gigabyte size or a terabyte size. It is more than that. So mga 1,000 terabytes ng data, that can be considered as big data. What are examples of this? Every 5 years, the government tries to collect census data. So it's the basis on the population value of the country. So kung mayroon si National Statistics Authority nga, okay, we are now at 120 million Filipinos. That is based from that data. And because the quantity of that data is quite large, at 100 million, and take note that they're not just listing you, but they're profiling you. So once they ask, they know if at that year nga nag-survey sila, mag-ask sila if you're still a student, if you're working, how much is your income, how many children or wives did you have. So all these things are put into data. And dili lang na siya masulod sa isa lang na computer. So big data can be turned into GIS as long as we can simplify that data. So nowadays, big data is stored in large servers in Metro Manila na sila sa National Statistics Authority. But because of COVID, we want to utilize this big data. Okay, this can give us some idea, some added information on some up-to-date requirements. Like for example, there's this thing called vaccination, di ba? And everyone's been crazy kung unsa man magpaturok ko og Sinovac, AstraZeneca, BioNTech, dagan man kayo klase. And then the government said we can only purchase at the moment Sinovac. So everyone went crazy kay Sinovac was so expensive. Well, as for their kanang judgment. But if you look into the data, Sinovac is actually beneficial for the Philippines. But why? First, AstraZeneca, BioNTech, and even Moderna requires a very large cold chain facility. Kasi pasabot ana. The vaccine manggod, before it can be given to you, it needs to be cooled at a very low temperature. So sa man na, sir, kanang kabugnaw. Dili pareha kabugnaw sa imong ref. Mas bugnaw pa ana. Dili pareha kabugnaw sa Selecta nga cooler. Mas bugnaw pagin siya dapat ana. It's sub-zero. So dili na ma-achieve sa atong normal nga freezers. So kung mo purchase ni tag AstraZeneca, BioNTech o Moderna, maskin pag barato sila, maglisod ta kay by virtue of data, wala may cold chain facilities tanan munisipyo, tanan baryo, tanan barangay sa Pilipinas. Okay? So muna nga the government said, we can only afford Sinovac. Why? Sinovac doesn't require large cold chain facilities. Kinahanglan na siya isulod og ice bucket. Basta kay ma-maintain lang ang at least 0 or 10 degrees centigrade, pwede na siya ma-inject. The other thing, Sinovac can be given at 1 dose. Compared sa AstraZeneca, BioNTech, Moderna, it needs 2 doses. And it's a challenge kung imo nang i-record na, for example, si Miss Vanessa Lugar magpaturok karon, dayon gitawag na siya for a week after or 14 days man na. So, butang ta lang sa 20th day, gitawag na siya para magpa-second dose. Dabi kay ang data sa gobyerno, sabi sa LG kay mano-mano man, usaon nila na trace. So that was also the consideration of the government niya. We can only afford Sinovac. Okay? Kay once raman iturok, kung maggamit ta og gatong medyo barato, maglisod man ta sa database, wala tay data. Di man ta kabalo kung pila ang kubre na kinahanglan nato turukan, pila ang senior citizen na kinahanglan turukan, din kaduha pagid na sa og trace. Dayon gibudgetan ba na per person na duha ka turok. Dubig na matay, asa padulong to second na turok. So na inana nga issues. So muna ang challenge kay karon nga kung inana, why not divide the vaccination per LGU? Ang problema po, tanan LGU, wala kabalo mo GIS per LGU. Only few LGUs have this capacity. So, in big cities like si Pasig, okay kay siya, di so siya nabot ang plan. Kay they know where their people are. They know how many are their frontline kanang workers. They know how much children needs to be vaccinated. Even the elderly are needed nga para i-vaccinate. So, naka-advantage sa ana nga cities, Metro Manila, kay na sila datos. Pero diri sa Mindanao, lisod kaayo. Okay? Muna siya nga ingon ang gobyerno nga tagaanta mo sa Sinovac, pero kamoy pangitag paagi asa ninyo na mamapa. So karon isa sa task nato sa Xavier kay kanang gipamapata tawangan ang mga LGU para kanang ma-record nila kung asa ang mga area nga pwede nato ma-vaccinate. And napay issue ana kay asa man pod mag-vaccinate, sir? Kay dili man na basta-basta mo pili lang kuan kanang barangay hall. Kay ang vaccination dapat tuol sa health facility. So unsa man na ang requirement sa DOH ana, dapat hospital. Dobi kay wala may hospital karon. Ang nasa Miss or butang talang from Upol padulong sa Lugait, there's only one hospital. That's found in Alubihid. On the eastern side, there's also one hospital in Balingasag. And kung dungano ni mo nag-vaccinate, tanan lugar mo adto sa Balingasag o Alubihid. So, muna po na isa ka issue kay lisod kay i-manage pag inana nga multi-sectoral, kidaghan kayo imong vaccinate and multi-level pa jud. So diya makita nato ang power sa data no kay dagko naman ang data set. Then dili na siya basta-basta mamapa. So we need to employ other methods. That's why online is an option. Why? Primarily because you can access it through your computer, smartphone, or maskin tablet. So you don't need higher level computers nga katuging server type or gaming PCs. Dili naman kinana ang requirement for GIS. But 10 years ago, munang requirement. So muna nga dili mi basta-basta makateach og GIS kung wala kay sakto nga computer. But now, because everything can be accessed on the web and materials are available, pwede na gid siya ma-deliver. So by that, data can be turned into GIS with your proper hardware, whether it's a laptop or a cell phone, and you can visualize your data. The history of web maps, as mentioned earlier, no, it's quite new. Ang edad sa kanihing web mapping is pareha na ang edad. So I'm still at my 29th year here in this world. So pare-pareha pa may edad. So ang World Wide Web was introduced in 1989. But nakasikad gid ang web maps katong nanay mga emails, kinahanglan man may butang imong address in the year 1991. So mo din siyang na-introduce ang different ways of capturing data from Xerox Spark Map viewers. Unsa man ni siya? If you recall katong Namia map ganiha, isa na sa gigamitan og kaninga Xerox machine. Ang yara gyud is maskan niya ang imuhang paper maps nga gimano-mano og sulat, then kaya niya i-convert into digitized format. So nag-advance na hinay-hinay until gigawas ang Google Earth. Google Earth was launched in February of 2005. And barely 16 years, dako na kasyag na income. Until catch na siya sa ArcGIS, muna nga nanatay conversion or divergence, not divergence, kaning kay nagkontra man ni sila in a certain year after, no? So nag-diverge na sila after, but before that nag-agree na sila nga mogamit ang ArcGIS o data ni Google. So diya na dayon mas napaspas ang mapping. Kay daghan man kay nagamit. So nanggawas silang GeoNode, gigamit pa rin sa Pokemon Go ang kanang data sa Google na for the past 10 years gi-collect. Muli ng basis nga na dayon yung mga kanang immersive nga mga games nga until karon they are also profiting. So sa among work with WebGrid, this is the project that I talked about nga among labad sa ulo karon is the vaccination. So kanang dili man gani kami unahon og vaccinate, pero kami ang problema karon saon og pili kinsa unahon og vaccinate. So the data that we're using is from the government, from also from surveys, and then we want to ask the question, where should you be vaccinated? And who should be first vaccinated? Doon na nagyatag nga guidelines ang DOH, dagan man tong question kay ang nakabutang health workers. So apil ba ang barangay health worker na panginana or apil ba ang kanang unlicensed nga nurse? So na mga nga question kay health worker may po na sila. It's just that they belong to the informal economy. So na nga mga prioritization nga dapat na to makita. And it's good that you profile the data first. So just like before you can do actual mapping and create your visualizations. So the idea here is that we educate more virtual users. Okay? Kung daghan tang users nga kabalo ma-access sa data, mas malikayan nato ang fake news or ang kanang gitawag nato false news. So kung daghan kabalo mo access, maskin pa og kamo later di nyo gamiton ang GIS, but na may idea nga kanang pwede gid mabutang ang data in a map and ma-access pwede mo for other purposes. So virtual users still account for GIS users. So kami dayon nga naa sa taas, whether we are specialists or technicians, doesn't mean we are the best. What it only means is that we have a certain task in trying to make the data correct. So maskin pag ang top scientist like si Sir Dex, isa lang kabuok, naging na siya team of analysts, specialists, technicians, and users. Though the domain of knowledge decreases, so bitaw niya nga ang triangle duha, ang isa inverse or inverted, ang isa kay kadtong regular na pyramid. So the knowledge actually increases as you go up, but the kanang uses of GIS actually is made by those who access. So primarily, it should be designed for the user. Kaya maskin pag isa ka scientist ang generate of data, 1 million or 1 billion of them will access it. So through the users. And relevant kay karon kay because of falseness, pare adtong kanang diretso ra giingon ang uban nga kanang gi-corrupt ang Sinovac na pag-purchase masking walay evidence. So mo to na spread na dayon, dagan na din kaayo dili gusto magpa-inject. Then ang nakalabad pa gid sa ulo ani kay to achieve herd immunity, the Philippines with 120 million population should vaccinate 70%. So 70 million ra gyud ang budget sa gobyerno. The other million will have to find their own way kung saan nila pa-vaccinate. But kana kung nasa 40 million plus na wala na appeal sa programa, they can afford. So muto silang wala gipang appeal kay pwede man to sila mag-choose for AstraZeneca. Lower ka mo puhon. Pagbalik niyo og eskwela, di man mo pabalikod sa campus kung wala mo na vaccinate or wala mo negative results sa COVID. So, XU will offer, we can vaccinate you. But of course, si XU, dili na siya muhata og vaccination nga Sinovac. Kaya di man na ibaligya sa iya. The gobyerno will only sell AstraZeneca. So, pwede din mo magpa-inject dito. But you need to pay. Hindi magyapon na libre. So, mo pay mo na sa 1-2 para ma-vaccinate mo. So, inana na siya. So, kamo tong 40 million nga dili apil sa programa. Kung dili mo ma-apil, ha? Pero dool mo sa dughan sa politiko na ma-apil mo. So, the point about it is that because only 70% will be vaccinated, na fear na sa tao nga, di na lang kung magpa-vaccinate kay basig unsay suludan ng vaccine. Especially nga napatay scare with Dingvaxia. At kung sa Dingvaxia, kanang it was not really a case nga namatay ang bata tungod of kadong vaccine, but it was perpetuated by those who don't want the vaccine. Okay? Kaya para sa ilaha, it was expensive, which of course is true. Ibaligya raman to by Pfizer alone. Wala lain market ng baligya. So para ma-lower ang value, ilahang daot nga kanang dili man to siya maayo. So dagan ay kaayo nag-apil-apil, so gigamay ang value sa Dingvaxia. So karon ang ilan lang pamaagi kay alis dan og pangalan. So isa na siya. So going back to the point nga sa gobyerno, in the latest survey that we did for a partner institution, they said nga cooperative gani siya, only 30% would want to be vaccinated. So di ba makabuang kay gusto makata masulbad ang problema sa COVID, pero the data tells us nga dili tanan gusto magpa-vaccinate and ang gobyerno nagpalit na. So asa man napadulong ang uban vaccine karon. So muna nga we want to advocate this by try to map out things kung asa sila nabutang. Kay kung makibawaan nato nga kani nga mga lugar or kani nga mga tao doesn't want to be vaccinated, but they have an opportunity to get the vaccine, why not teach them, and why not, because they're users, encourage them nga kung imong lugar ma-vaccinate, you can now go free. Dili na ka mag-mask, dili na ka tabaka, pwede na ka makikinom, etc. So that's the murag kanang power nga pwede nimo mahatag sa ila. So, but not all data needs to be mapped. So isa po ni siya sa wisdom sa GIS kay it's only called GIS if the data can be turned into location. So there are different formats of information that you can process, from data, knowledge, wisdom, etc. And you can produce different applications for that. Kung data, so big data. Kung intelligence imo gusto, so you can use apps and dashboards. Kung wisdom na, so user-based decisions, choices, and preferences. So sa GIS, pag mag-create ka og product, depende na sa imong goal. If your goal is for data, big data ka padulong. If your goal is for knowledge, so you can create stories, you can create web services, or if wisdom imong apas, it should be something that the user wants. So in data, there should also be wisdom. In terms of structures, it's a very simple system lang. We use multi-structured systems, but they are independent from each other, but they can also be connected. So muna nga, ang smartphone, lahi man og system, ang computer, itong desktop computer, lahi man pod og system, pero kaya nato na sila i-connect using the web. O ganing web ang tawag, you can connect everything online using your what do you call this, internet. And you can publish and share multi-layer features and points on a single web map. So later, as part of your requirements of course, you will create web maps. So anything that you generate in Q should be published online to produce information such as this one. So softwares. By the way, okay pa ba tanan diya? Madunggan pa ba ko?
Okay,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, pa, sir.
Okay. Sige. Softwares. Now, daghan kayo software available karon for WebGIS. There's one from QGIS, GeoServer, OpenStreetMap, OSGeo, and even MapServer. Ako na-try so far is GeoServer, QGIS, and OpenStreetMap. Sa OpenStreetMap, you only need an account. Pwede ka maka-generate of points and information. But ang OpenStreetMap has a feature nga dapat i-verify siya by someone para ma-publish. So muna isa ka kanang disadvantage sa OpenStreetMap. Di mo ma-publish on the fly. Meaning, dili ninyo mapakita sa tanan diretsyo. Okay, kuan pa siya validate. Si GeoServer is also good. Okay? Gamit may ani for one project. The only problem with GeoServer is hardware. Dili siya mo run kung laptop lang or masking gaming PC. Kailangan ka mo operate og server computer, which falls by about 80,000 and up. Then it's a very sturdy computer. It can last 10 years na naka-on. Ang iya pong problem kay kusog siya mukha ng kuryente. Kay server computer man siya. Kailangan siya UPS, kailangan siya og 24 hours ng kuryente. And then kailangan siya og very stable na internet. So like sa ato ang SLMIS na siya server. So mura nagparehaan ni GeoServer. So gigamit naman to siya in one project, but the province doesn't want it kay kanang ang ilahang na purchase ng computer was not enough to support the GeoServer. So muna nga we'll had to look for other ways. So muna nagamit din mi karon og online yung mga versions kay it saves time and money. Kay don't need to purchase large scale computers. So in doing so, nga magamit ka o web maps, dagan pod pa maagi. One is Leaflet. Si Leaflet is a free and open source software. But ang ako lang problem with Leaflet kay you need a good background sa coding. Kay mag-code ka using Java para nga maka-create ka og content. So dili man tanan kabalo mag-coding. So munang wala pod kay siya na popular sa general public. Popular ni siya sa academics, mga kanang teachers or researchers nga gusto mo create og content nga unique. Okay, mag-code man ka and that's unique for you. So, naggagamiton ang leaflet. So, for our exercises, di lang ta magamit ani kay taas pa kayong proseso nga i-review mo on coding. Tugay na ba ito yung coding? Ang uban nag-ayos sa coding. Kung magaling sila nakadumdum sa ilang mga C++ codes hantod karon. So, di na lang nato ni siya i-expound. Maning examples, if you use kanang leaflet, maning mga examples sa iyong mga products. CUP is using leaflet because na siya team of programmers and coders. So, easier sa iya magbuhat. And mas safe sab siya kay kanang you can protect your own data kay it's housed in a department like in UP, so mas easier. And dali ra po siya i-share ang data. Basta lang ma-present siya in web form. But again, kay house man siya in a department, ga-require siya of hardware. So, si UP na may capability to do that, di pareha sa XU nga ang atong server is only for SLMIS. So, di gina siya pwede sa gulag lain. Si UP, dagan siya, naa siya for its own SLMIS, nasab siya for the enrollment, nasab siya for projects like this one. Kaya na naman siya support from the government. Other, free code camp. This is one example. Kanang mag-create ka website using coding. Again, highly dependent on coding. So, gamit siya karon with COVID-19 kaya anyone can create content as long as you have a map. Dugay na siya i-develop pag wala kay knowledge on coding. So, mo pwedeng isa ka disadvantage. Naapoy Tableau Public, this one. I tried creating one. Medyo lisod siya sa ako tungod kay gamay kay ang screen sa laptop. Okay. If you notice, daghan kay siya info nga pwede mabutang. Dayon, pag mag-create na kag dashboard o mapa, kinakagdaho nga screen, katog yung kanang pang TV nga size kay daghan kay siya pwede ibutang nga info. Dayon, dili lang kay siya visually friendly. Kay wala pa kay siya na fully developed. So, Tableau Public ang tawagan. So, ang gamiton nato is kani ArcGIS Online. Very user-friendly. Just make sure that you're using the free one. So, the ArcGIS Online public account will be taught to you next week. Saan ni siya gamit, how to create content, how to add content, and how you can produce maps for the general public. So, ang na-learn niyo sa ako as siguro sa programming was the straightforward story maps. I-create ang content dire, tapos i-publish ang story maps. But, for this course, kay Geomatics naman we will do the long method. Meaning, you will create the maps in QGIS. Okay? Tanan content, i-create dahil sa Q. Itong mga shapefile. And then, i-load ninyo sa ArcGIS Online using this software. So, mag-create mo account ana. Simple na kayo yung GUI. You have the tools, map content, and map view. And then, kaning ma-create nyo yung account, you will just load the shape files that you created from QGIS. And then from there, we will create contents. So, sa man ang contents? We will have contents na magamit og web maps, story maps, and even kanang mga scripted na mga maps. So, what you need for this exercise is just a very simple hardware. Any laptop will do. Okay? So, laptop doon na uban pwede mo gamit og smartphone pero di mo parehatanan og smartphone muning lisod. So, para uniform laptop lang or computer nga na internet, pwede ra. So, sa typical nga system sa GIS, you will need client machines, plotters, GPS, and any other hardware. Pero sa kanang web map, makat na to ang system kay we will just use a dedicated computer or laptop to function or to perform all of the mapping that we need. So, it has some benefits. It can reduce lead times, mas dali i-publish. Improve cross-collaboration because you can share the data to anyone and they can verify it for you. And low-cost barrier. Okay? Kung mag-purchase actually o ganang GIS software nga katong ArcGIS, one single license will cost you 5,000 per year. Okay? Muna siya subscription basis naman. For a university to purchase it for pila to ka license gani 100 licenses, it's at 3 million. So muna ang mahal. So kung magamit kag online, wala kay i-pay in terms of subscription. Kay free man siya nga version. So manang low cost year. So manang ginagamit na mo siya for trainings kay dali siya i-learn and anyone can publish content on the fly. So ang options niya to produce. So as mentioned ganyan no, ang learn ninyo sa programming is only story maps. So we will cover the 4 methods of publishing content from web map using map and presentation. So may sample here. Second, web map application. Kadtuging website nga kanang unique for the project. So kopyaon mo tong link para maka-access. Nasa web embed website. So katong familiar sa Friendster before, we had to use some codes na i-generate na mo from another website to customize our page sa Friendster. So gusto ka glitter, like kaninga code, gusto ka black ang color, kaninga code. So same gyapon aning web embedded website. Sorry. So sa web embedded, naka-generate na code, then i-paste nimo sa imuhang kaning website or even gani sa other pages, automatic din siya maka-generate of map. So, ang disadvantage ng ani kay kung unsa ang imong gigamit na code, mura to ang ma-generate na mapa. So, gamitan po nato ni for some exercises. Then of course, the classic story maps. So, gamitan niya po nato na. So, for your final project, what I require you is to develop one story map and either of the 3 remaining types, whether it's a web map application, or a web embed in website. So duha ang inyong i-generate. So muna na siyang basihan sa inyong final exam o midterm exam. Ang laboratory ninyong compilation will be part of your class participation. That's quite big also, around 60% of your grade. So ayaw gyapon kumpiyansa. Not 30, 60, 60% of your grade. To be clear, that's 60% of your grade. Ang compilations ng daan. So, midterm is around 30%. Final term ng laboratory compilation is around 30%. The other 40% will come from the projects. So, ito siyang naakay web map. So, naakay story map and either of the 3. So, more details will be posted to you next week para makastart na mo graph sa inyong projects. And the deadline for that will be the last day of the quarter. So you can mark your calendars in advance. The last day is on February 23. That's the last day. Okay? And then hopefully I can give you your grades by February 27. So mag-adjust ko karon kay kung pareha last time mag-grado ko sa end na sa semester, dagan kay problema kay maka-INC gid kog estudyante. Kay usahay ang estudyante nakalimot og submit or kanang dili na niya ma-access iyang work. So mas earlier karon mas better. Kay para maka-proceed mo diretso sa inyong other kanang subjects. Okay. So these are the examples of how you can publish your work. This is using ArcGIS Online as web map. So as a web map, there's a link na inyong ma-generate. Tapos magamit ninyo ang basic na functions. So, maka-add mo og data, maka-click mo og slide, maka-kanang view pod mo sa content sa data. So, muna isa ka example. So, muna siya. So, naay data katong mga points na i-layer in one zone. And then, if i-click in information, ani, mugawas sa kung sa nga data ang ibutang. So, kani siya is a case of fictitious or dummy data on kanang COVID-19 in Barangay 15. So, gibutang lang tong fictitious nga data para makita po nato kung asa ang number of COVID patients in that zone. So, example lang na siya. But for your case, you will be free to choose which topic or application you want for your project. So, maski structural, earthquake, kamo bahala. Basta kayo na mo data magamit. Option 2 is web map application. So sa web map application, you can choose to show it sa public and then the link for that map covered na siya kanina sa ubos. This thing na ma-generate ninyo. Pag ma-generate na rin na siya, you can choose to have different views na ay attachment viewer, basic viewer, comparison, etc. You can be free o kung unsa ni siya. But next week na nako i-demonstrate kung unsaon ni og kanang function. The other one is embed in a website. So muni na atay ma-create nga link o kanang, this is actually an HTML code. So ang HTML code can be generated here, and then there are some controls na pwede enable o i-disable. And then ang tsada kay kung na kay own website or blog baka kanang pwede nimo i-copy ang HTML code. Dayon para sa gibuhat na mo sa XU, ni input na din siya. So ma-access gani ninyo ni karon. Kaning static na map nga na dire was for the data since May 11, 2020 na COVID cases. So wala to na update kay static map man siya. Pero interactive. So pag i-zoom nimo makita nimo ang kanang info sa likod tapos kung unsa po dayon ang data nga naa. Okay? And then the last is publishing using story maps. The beauty with story maps is it's pleasing to the eye and you can customize. Though there are limitations sa customization kay free man siya nga software, but it's enough to present something. Okay? So it's easier kung magkanang buhat kag account daan. So kaninga page was for katong nagtulo mo ko Sir Agus daan ani gigamit for kanang iyang projects sa iyang training. So you just use an email, a password, and then by signing in, you can access your story maps. So sa story maps, you can create multiple story maps. And ang example anay is actually akong i-show karon. Unless na questions, nabay questions?
Wala, sir.
Wala? Sige. So in eLearn, you will see some links. So like this one, kani siyang getting started with story maps. You can read this in advance, by the way, para na mo idea for the next week's session. Also on what are necessary for a story map, ang anatomy niya, and then basic examples. So let's go over with getting started with story maps first. Ay, sorry na, open naman ako nadangan. So kani siya, it's like a web page. Okay? Then you can add your name, some contents if you're fond of writing and describing a context. So pwede kang mag-add on more. And then you can add pictures like this one. This is what is a screenshot of a story map. Kaya kani is an instruction on how to get started with story maps. So pwede nyo na mabuhat. You can create titles. You can add narratives. And ito sa black palette, pareani. Pwede ninyo butangan o paragraphs, info, pwede ka magamit o video, image, audio if you want. Para dramatic kung kayo ang pag sa mapa, why not? Na background music. You can add images. You can move stuff around kay movable ni siya na ay kanang grabbing point na pwede na ito mabutangan. And of course, you can add a map. And the map will be dependent on the data that you will generate. So from the QGIS, whichever data man generate, isulod na to ArcMap, mo din ni siya ang result. Okay? So sa may example, ana, finished product. So this is one example. I'll show this first. Makita ba ang screen? Bataan COVID-19 story?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So isa ni sa example sa inyong buhaton for your final project. So, medyo political lang yun eh. This is for the province of Bataan. So, gi-mentor na mo ni sila to create a story map about COVID-19. So, you will write a small background on the project. Again, you're free to choose any project that you want. Pwede inline na sa inyong thesis if you want. Kaya kamulong man mo research methods. Mas maayo kay para isa na inyong presentation. Then, copy-paste na lang. So, you can add pictures, like kanina, siya sidebar. So as I scroll down, makita ang changes sa pictures. So kaya initiatives man daw ko nun but i-advertise ng isa Bataan ng ilang mga programs. Then, more info on what they used for their communication platforms. So like this one, the Move niya siya. This is GIF image nga ma-add. So pwede ra diretso. Ma-customize po siya. Makita man nila dire asa ang hotspot for COVID. And you can also add graphs. Tuluan ta mo later ang sound of add of graph na dynamic. When you say dynamic, naa siya kanang source from a Google Sheet. So kung unsay data gi-input sa Google Sheet, automatic din siya ma-update direct. So tuluan ta pud man. Next, more pictures if you want. Para yani, they extracted a table or graph data from their website na una na-generate mo website. So, gibutang nila. You can also create chronology of events. So, ila ramang gi-highlight diri ang ilahang progress. And more pictures if you want. But sa inyo ha, mas gusto ko mas gamay o words. Ayaw parehan yung like yung words. So, of course, the highlight of the event will be a map. So, like this one, this highlights the hazard of COVID-19 cases. So, they have a data of all LGUs or municipalities and their corresponding what we call this COVID cases. So like this one, municipality of Morong with this geocode and a classification if it's an urban municipality and the corresponding population. And you can also change the view of the data like any na may other layers. So pwede na to na mabuhatan. And again, this is interactive. So muning sa hazard. Next, pwede din nyo i-layer ang other data. So like this one, natural iyang gibutang. So they have a database already kung asa ang ilahang kanang what you call this? Asa ang ilahang other natural hazards. So atong ipakita karon. So muna siya. Na sila info daan kung unsa ang ilahang natatuan. Okay. Na sila data manggod on their wala ito gilogin niya. Kanang flooded zones or ila ba kahang kanang areas nga prone to kaning landslide. So, tusingan na itong review ha. Okay na ra. So, muni, natural hazards nila. They have flood susceptibility and also rainfall-induced landslide. So, same sa inyo ha, kung landslide yung apas. So, pwede na ito ma-layer dito. So, then nakatsada kay pag i-zoom niyo siya, makita gin ninyo ang specific info nga gusto ninyo. So, like this one, this is a map showing the susceptibility to flooding. So, colored in blue and violet. Dayon, the rest sa landslide is colored green, red, and brown. Okay, so you can easily do that here. Kaya pag nalang kay data, pwede na nimo ma-tell ang story. Naasab sila ay hospitals and quarantine facilities. Okay, so they have this data na nga asa ang ilang hospital. So pag i-click na to ang point na ana siya value. So this is kanang Nolet Hotel Lodge Inn. Nganong nahimo man ang kuan sir? Health facility. Kuan man ni siya kanang diri dalon ang mga positive cases nila. So i-house siya for 14 days. So muna ang hotel o inn. Then ako yung mga hospital like this one. They have a data kung unsay ngalan sa hospital, the type, if it's private, the address, some info sa location, and even kung asa na siyang municipality na belong. Okay, nasa data on exposed elements. Like gusto mo lang itanaw ang tourism and kanang ilaha pong industrial facilities. So, you might be asking, unsa may relevant sa Bataan, sir? Dili mo gud buhaton tong nuclear power plant. So, hinalan sila makabalo kung unsay further effect ana sa ilahang province. So, like kani, naa sila Alternative Fuel Corporation. So, they have an idea kung unsa na nga industry dayon asa po na siyang LGU na butang. Okay, for purposes of management. So you see, you can tell the story of your map with the details that you have. So depende lang sa imuhang info nga gusto ipagawas. Like this one, they wanted also to show population density. So makita na to ang pila ang number of people in a certain province or municipality. So naatay idea kung pila sila kabuo. For purposes of planning, gamit kini siya. Para makabalo kag i-develop na ba niya into a subdivision, i-develop na ba niya into a commercial district, etc. So gamit kayo nga naka-info na sa map. Okay, so nilapas lang ko og 5 minutes. Naba mo'y questions?
Sir,
Yes, Pete.
for the exercises, will you just leave them on e-learn, like what to do?
For next week, I prefer na interactive siya. So just finish lang what you started with georeferencing, and then we'll do a synchronous session for the kanang ArcGIS Online. Mas prefer na ako kay kung may questions mo arise, diretso na to ma-feedback.
Okay, sir.
Mm-mm. But if you can't access it on time, so you can also use the recorded version if you want. Any other question? Hello. So 38 lang katao karon.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
So ang kuan sir ba exercise is ay matawag bag exercise ang kuan sir katong ArcGIS.
Yes, pero next week pa na ko ihatag ang buhatonod for that exercise.
Okay. So karon 30 sir bale duha ka book ang ipas sir ba or punan pa ang exercise. Kuan. 13 lang deadline ay kanus ang deadline is.
Kuan
Ay
na,
20 day 20.
ang last day of class is actually 16.
Ay
Pero ang deadline sa work ninyo kay 23.
okay. So duha lang sir ang kuan sir or kanang mapunan pa siya sir sa next week.
Dili kanang napamoy remaining exercises. Okay. Dayon sa remaining exercise na po din may atong final project na should have or should conduct
Okay.
atong story maps of the remaining 3 sa katong akong i-show.
Sige sir. Thank you sir.
Napay pangutana? Nabay ka chat or insan na? Princess Darapas raised a hand. Yes, Princess.
Hello, sir. Sir, medyo hindi ko nag-gets yung dun sa... So, gagamitin natin is yung ArcGIS?
Online,
or-
yes. For your final project.
Online.
Mm-mm.
Okay, sir. Online siya,
Okay.
sir. So, hindi siya
Yes.
like an application to actually download.
No, you don't need to download.
Okay. Sige,
Okay.
sir. Thank
But-
you, sir. Yun lang.
You still need to use your QGIS. Okay, the version mong good of ArcGIS doesn't allow you to create shape files. So you need to
Oh.
load your shape files in QGIS, edit them there, and then you can upload them to ArcGIS Online for the content management. So whether you use story maps for publication or any other platform.
Okay, sir. Sige, sir. Yun lang. Thank you.